share the stage at a number of air shows. Horschel is a very good friend of mine, and please, Airshow announcers, please welcome Hollywood Danny Kushner.
The highest award in the air show industry, the Sword of Excellence, and this is 25th and finale year. Folks, we're talking about ending careers on an up note. Today is a very joyous day. The next airplane taking off, 120 days with your prediction.
Now that's a pretty bold statement.
We'll introduce the pilots in the lead. Lewis from New York State. In the wing position, Ariel Luedi from Switzerland. Now, I've introduced you to these pilots. What I'm going to tell you about is to be able to fly formation like this is rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. The ability to do the aerobatic maneuvers right side up, upside down with the wingman only looking at the leader's airplane. Perhaps a target line, perhaps a paint line, perhaps a number, perhaps a letter, perhaps a ribbon line. Never looking into his cockpit, never looking at the ground, but only following the leader. Okay, now we've talked about the difficulty factor, the artistry in the sky, how skillful this is as you listen to the sound of the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Back to you.
Yes, indeed, Danny. This airplane, developed initially for the Royal Air Force, not for the United States Army Air Force. When Dutch Kippenberger said, give us 120 days, he said that kind of a statement, which is just unbelievably bold, and in many cases people would say stupid
And unreasonable and impossible.
But he had a secret weapon, Dan.
That secret weapon was he was ready. He had been getting ready, the war was imminent, so they had a design of their own to help the North American engineers and the forerunner to NASA, which they call MACA. They had a plan put together. They achieved their goal to get the airplane out in less than 120 days. And a president, one of your partners said, don't you pull that off. That was pure magic. Getting the airplane from the start of production to on the ramp, ready to fly in that short amount of time. Dutch Kippenberger said magic. He said, let me tell you something, partner. In the terms of magic, you cannot pull a rabbit out of a hat unless you have the rabbit in the hat.
And that rabbit in the hat was a wing design called laminar flow. And that was the fastest wing in the world at that point. And they married it up with this amazing fuselage and put that Allison engine on it. And we got the kind of sound, well, almost the kind of sound, because the Allison engine didn't really do quite well enough.
All right, now look over your right shoulder. Get up, coming in from your right. Get your cameras and your phones up. Open that film. Okay, watch this.
That Rolls-Royce engine was the thing that made the Mustang the iconic aircraft it was, because the Allison engine didn't perform at high altitude to keep up with the Hurricanes and Spitfires against the German Air Force.
All right, so Rolls-Royce had a two-stage supercharger. It allowed the aircraft to get up to another 10,000 feet of altitude, up to the dogfight arena around 35,000 feet, and helped it achieve another 100 miles per hour. Now, there's nothing wrong with the Allison engine. It was just designated to low level. They did good in some theaters, but the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine allowed the wing to finally do what it was built to do, go fast. Finally, the fuselage could get up to the higher altitudes, and finally, the dogfight in those arenas up 35,000 feet and above sometimes made the aircraft victorious. Now, they call this the Cadillac of the sky. I can see the gleam coming in this time from over our left shoulder. I think Rob and I, a lot of times we will hear from our devoted fans, shut up, we want to hear the engine, so we're going to be quiet.
because they were making them as one-offs. It was American mass production ingenuity and the arsenal of democracy that made the Mustang Merlin engine workable in great numbers.
And that was done with American ingenuity by the Akron Motor Car Company. And when we didn't bring that up over the years, General Chuck Yeager would come up and pull us aside and said, that's not a British engine, that's an American engine built in Detroit by the Akron Motor Car Company. You know what we said? Yesterday. Yes,
56,000 of them were built, and it was this sound and this performance that in 1943 the Senate War Investigating Committee, then headed by Senator Harry Truman, later become President of the United States, said of the Mustang that it was the most perfectly aerodynamically curvy pursuit made in existence.
Adjustable, open or closed. It is a form of jet thrust.
Indeed.
300 pounds of jet thrust called the
Meredith effect.
In fact, it augmented the speed and helped to gate that big radiator at the bottom. You'll see that on one of the passes. Now, we're talking about that radiator. Yeah. Let's go on with that.
Well, yeah, initially, the early design of the Mustang, they had cooling problems from the bottom of the fuselage by an inch and 3/4. They call it a
gutter because it was shaped like a gutter in their sidewalk out on your street. So, our sidewalk. Now, what that did, it now smoothed the air. It didn't have the burbling effect. It smoothed the air going through the radiator. And you say, well, some of those ideas were bringing from the past. But wait, we're celebrating the 50th year of the F-16. What can we see on the belly scoop of the F-16?
that same daggone year from 1940 to 1972 when that airplane was first designed. That kind of technology came out and Americans for victory or a fight for freedom.
As these two pilots fly their warbirds, common to a lot of pilots flying the World War II bombers and fighters, and trainers from past eras. People often ask Rob and I, why do they fly these warbirds? Well, they have a very specific mission. They say we fly the warbirds to honor the men and women who built them. We fly the warbirds to honor the men and women who repaired them. And we fly the warbirds in honor of the men and women who lost their lives either in combat or transporting the aircraft. And that is their salute to America and to our veterans. And we never will forget our veterans. Those who have gone before us, those who are still with us, and those who are gaining veteran status even today. For that, to give a big round of applause to all the people, all the sacrifices, and all of the great efforts that make this country great. We are so fortunate.
16 million Americans served in the military during World War II. 405,000 lost their lives. The history of World War II has largely been forgotten in our schools with only a paragraph or two. Not understanding that our way of life was threatened, and everybody knew it. And the sacrifices were not only made by those who served, but everybody at home, because everybody at home wanted to make sure that our fighting boys, the boys out there, over there, were able to have whatever they needed to survive and win that.
Whether it was on the ground, on the water, or in the air. Over your right shoulder again. Hold the line. Production run of the P-51.
Around 15,600, but if your numbers
Change from that, we say, you're right. It's approximate. We read a lot of books, the numbers move around a little bit, but who cares that much. Now, of those 15,000 plus,
You want to see the tickets?
there are only about 150 that are out there. About half of those are in museums, and probably, on any given day, probably around the world, 70 to 80 P-51s could actually get into the air.
You brought up something, Danny, with me in the past, and yesterday here, after the war, as I recall, a P-51 back in $1940 was somewhere around, to manufacture one, was around $80,000. But after the war, there were a lot of them sitting around.
And you could pick them up for several $100s. The common number is $1,200. They were in storage areas, military, government storage areas, all over the U.S. All right, our pilot's coming in to fly once again. Rob, on the rollout, do a flyover on both of the great pilots.
I sure will.
I have so much admiration for these gentlemen who, by the way, one of them commutes, so Rob, I'll tell you about that. Yeah. Airplane's coming in to your right, Rob, on the microphone.
On the lead aircraft coming in is Luedi Horschel. Grew up in Western New York State. His dad flew a Cessna 182. He learned how to fly that, and now he flies a number of different aircraft, including not only the Mustang, but he flies the FG-1D Corsair as part of the Navy's Legacy Flight Program. That's a big deal because it shares the commonality, the tradition of World War II aviation for the Navy with its current aircraft. And then we look at Ariel, who flies, leads a three-ship team in Switzerland. Literally, he commutes from Switzerland to the United States to fly with Luedi Horschel in the jack cases. What a tremendous thing. And you can see, if you look at carefully, you can see that radiator scoop underneath and that little bit of a gutter still on the airplane. It's amazing, Danny, when you think of the training through which the pilots went. Primary, basic, and advanced training. The advanced trainer had this landing gear that they were very close together on the gears. It was very dangerous. These were a whole lot easier to handle on the ground because the